Greetings comic lovers and welcome back to Casually Comics, the channel where we chat all things comics, from reviews of comics new and old, to history, to anecdotes, to really wherever our whims take us. Today we're going to be taking a look at what I like to call fandom basics. In this case, a comic book history basic. These are terms or concepts so ingrained that everybody just feels that everybody knows them. You know, the kinds of things that if you're new you might be embarrassed to ask about, or if you've been in a fandom for a while you've probably forgotten that you ever didn't know what they were. Voice got real deep for that. Today, we're going to ask the question, just what is the Silver Age? A bold soul actually asked this in the comment section of my Insta. You go, Vernon's Exotica. If you're always willing to ask a question, hit that like button. So let's do this. Get ready for a lot of info, still kind of cliff note-sized, but also to learn. Yay, learning! Comic book history is divided into ages, different eras defined by either the creation of new heroes or the types of stories published and trends. The Silver Age is unique and so well remembered because it sees the dawn of so many classic heroes and also a very specific brand of story. But how did this happen and why? And why is it called the Silver Age? At its base level, the Silver Age is the re-establishment of enthusiasm and creativity in superhero comics. It is now dated as having begun in 1956 and having ended in 1970, though some historians will quibble on the exact dates, but they're pretty firm on 1956 as a starting point. The groundwork for what would become the Silver Age would largely be laid in 1954, though the rumblings that would lead up to this would begin after the Second World War. The Golden Age had seen the creation of several prominent heroes, mostly by DC, because Marvel doesn't become Marvel until 1961. Actually, Marvel establishes itself as what it will become as a direct result of the Silver Age, which was started by DC. Before this, during the Golden Age, Marvel Comics was Timely Comics, and later Atlas Comics. And they graced the world with Captain America, who is largely considered to be their contribution to Golden Age heroes. Some will be generous and include Namor. On the other side, you had DC's Golden Age heroes, Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman, who would later come to be known as the Trinity. And also kicking around the Golden Age was Fawcett Comics' Captain Marvel, the original Captain Marvel, Billy Batson. These are by no means the only characters created at this time by any of the companies mentioned. However, the Golden Age would end largely as a result of World War II. Post-war, the public would turn its interest away from superhero comics, though not away from comics in general, but instead they would become interested in other genres. Genres like horror and romance, but with a special focus on the latter, plus crime comics. And these comics could be pretty graphic. This was the era of EC Comics, founded in 1944, a publisher that gave the world Tales from the Crypt, The Vault of Horror, Weird Science, and also Mad Magazine. It also gave the world much more. However, a death knell was coming from a source that is still a death knell to many fandoms and hobbies: salacious, unscientifically founded criticism. This criticism claimed that comics were destroying the minds and morality of the youth. There was one book that would bring all of these ideas together and play off of already pre-existing societal concerns. And that book is the now infamous Seduction of the Innocent by Frederick Wertham. This book would later be massively critiqued for twisting evidence, for not really having any kind of scientific backing, and for really just being a place for the author to spitball his own biases and ideas. Wertham would claim that these horror and crime comics were perverting youth, turning them into criminals. This was added to because youthful delinquency was on the rise, and a few of the perpetrators, when questioned, did admit to reading comic books. Does all of this sound a little familiar? It should. However, he didn't stop there. He also turned his attention not only to crime and horror and romance, but also to superhero comics. DC superhero comics because, as mentioned, Marvel wasn't a thing yet, so he focused on the biggest, most popular characters of the time. And oh boy, did he have a lot to say. He claimed that Batman and Robin were in a homoerotic, pedophilic relationship. This was because they lived alone together and sometimes shared a bed. He claimed that Wonder Woman was a lesbian because she was strong and independent, and that the comic had bondage themes, except that part was true when the creator admitted as much. Creator of Wonder Woman, super into BDSM. Both of these characters were especially problematic to him because they didn't have family units, or traditional family units, a clear sign of homosexuality. Would you like some Wertham quotes? You know you would. The Batman type of story may stimulate children to homosexual fantasies, of the nature of which they may be unconscious. Robin is a handsome, ephemic boy, usually shown in his uniform with bare legs. He is buoyant with energy and devoted to nothing on Earth or in interplanetary space as much as to Bruce Wayne. He often stands with his legs spread, the genital region discreetly evident. For boys, Wonder Woman is a frightening image. For girls, she is a morbid ideal, where Batman is anti-feminist feminine, the attractive Wonder Woman and her counterparts are definitely anti-masculine. Personally, for me, Seduction of the Innocent said way more about Wertham than it said about any comic book out there. But some of his beliefs are still in use and applied. For example, here are his thoughts on TV. Through TV and moving pictures, a child may see more violence in 30 minutes than the average adult experience in a lifetime. What children see on the screen is violence as an almost casual commonplace of daily living. Violence becomes the fundamental principle of society, the natural law of humanity. Killing is as common as taking a walk, a gun more natural than an umbrella. Children learn to take pride in force and feel ashamed of ordinary sympathy. They are encouraged to forget that people have feelings. Think about this, and comics and other pastimes in the modern era and arguments that are applied to them to this day. There are still people who feel this way about comic books, that they're problematic and that youth shouldn't be reading them. And just like now, the comics of yesteryear reacted in fear. Wertham had the veneer of academia. He appeared official. There was no reason for lay people who were just picking the book up casually to not believe what he was saying, especially parents. It's very easy to activate in parents the "won't somebody please think of the children," and no one wanted to contribute to what at the time was viewed as deviance. Seduction of the Innocent was published in 1954, and that same year saw the creation of the Comics Code Authority, the CCA. Partially because of this, and also because of the, at the time, as mentioned, rise of juvenile delinquency and the panic surrounding it. This was not linked to the post-war, but instead to comic books. Comic books were to the late 40s what Dungeons and Dragons were to the 80s and what video games are to now. The CCA was founded by the Comics Magazine Association of America. This was proposed so that publishers could self-regulate rather than have government intervention. There were Senate hearings about this. That's how seriously people were taking all this. The panic was real. Comics were being burned in the streets. This was no joke. The CCA would implement clear rules as to what could and could not be depicted. For example, the remove cleavage rule, the no vampire rule, the no same bed rule. And it very quickly became the point, even though it was unofficial and there was no actual thing in writing that distributors had to do this, but distributors would only carry comics that had been passed by the code. All of this would lead to the dawn of the Silver Age. Because of all this, horror comics, action comics, and romance comics would fall out of favor. EC Comics would ultimately go bankrupt, which was a shame, as for the time especially, it was really pushing boundaries. It would even do things like have protagonists of color. There was one story in particular that was protested. It was called Judgment Day. Well, here's the thing. All the comic book companies observe each other, and still do, and no one wants to go bankrupt. So the companies had to scramble and look back at what was safe and what was a sure bet in the past. Superheroes. For all the criticism laid against existing heroes, the concept of superheroes in general had not been degraded by Wertham's book, not entirely. So DC decided that superheroes were still a safe bet, but they had to do something to revamp them. They couldn't just bring back pre-existing characters, and now because of this book, they had to be careful about how they presented their core trinity. So they decided to relaunch one of the heroes of the Golden Age, who had been decently popular, but with a new origin, a new name, a new costume, and they went with The Flash. The stories and origins of the Silver Age would also be more sci-fi based, as sci-fi was really beginning to pick up, and also they were trying to move away from the occult, because as one can imagine, anything occultish or magic based was also not viewed with too much favor. And some of the Golden Age heroes, well, they had magical origins. And it worked. People loved it. The second Flash, Barry Allen, was created in 1956 and is considered by most historians to be the first hero of the Silver Age. Writers would use the restrictions placed upon them by the CCA to be creative and find ways to tell different stories, mostly because they had to. DC found itself creating a slew of new heroes. The Silver Age Green Lantern would follow, and eventually the Justice League in 1960. This would lead to a resurgence of interest in superheroes. People were loving them again. And so at this point, Marvel sat up and took notice. Seeing the massive amounts of success that DC was having and how there was a new resurgence in youthful readers, it activated the sleuth skills of Martin Goodman. Martin Goodman was what was called a trend follower. He was the founder of Marvel since all the way back in 1939 when it was timely, and he was always looking for what to hop onto to make his company a success. So after seeing how much everybody loved the Justice League, he went to then writer Stan Lee and said, "Make me a Justice League. I want my own." But but different enough so no cease and desist. Lee would, however, take a very different approach than what Goodman was anticipating, and in 1961 would grace the world with the Fantastic Four, who would come to be known as Marvel's first family, and would be a very different superhero team. The Fantastic Four would represent a different take on the Silver Age, unburdened by legacy with which comes pre-existing expectations for characters, and they were not under the same scrutiny as DC, not being called out like they had been in the Seduction of the Innocent. They hence had more leeway and had more time to observe trends, rather than having to change midstream. So their heroes would be more flawed and have more discord, but still stay in line with the CCA. This made them more popular with older readers and led to Marvel being labeled as the sophisticated comic line. This era is known as the Marvel Renaissance. This is part of the reason when my people think of the Silver Age, they tend to think of DC first, because there are different things occurring at each company, even though they both happen during the Silver Age. And a lot of Marvel stories would still be very zany and outlandish. Marvel's Silver Age would see the creation of much of their pantheon. In this period in particular, the Hulk and most notably Spider-Man, just to name a few. These characters were new, unfamiliar, and hence very exciting. At this point in history, the rivalry between these two companies would crystallize, and they both would push each other to do better and be incredibly petty at times. Both companies would seek to see how far they could push the code without outright breaking it. This era would see the rise of talent still known to this day: Stan Lee, Jack Kirby, Carmine Infantino, Neil Adams, Steve Ditko, and more. In other companies, this era would see the rise of Casper the Friendly Ghost and Richie Rich as people sought to try and find a way to keep other genres alive, and to try and survive under this very strict code. However, nothing could stop the juggernaut that was the return to the superhero age. Another huge factor in the Silver Age was television. Comics were willing to take advantage of what was still viewed to many as an inferior or lesser medium, as they themselves were sometimes known as an inferior and lesser medium. And the versions established of characters during the Silver Age would be even more aggressively family-friendly than their comic counterparts. This is the era that sees the rise of Batman with Adam West, which even at the time was a satire of the Silver Age, as it comes out in the mid-60s, which means the Silver Age had been ongoing for a while at that point. That Batman show is more self-aware than people give it credit for. Bat-Watusi. So why was it called the Silver Age? Well, the term itself appears to have originated well into the Silver Age, when the letters column of Justice League of America number 42 in 1966, Scott Taylor of Westport, Connecticut wrote, "If you guys keep bringing back the heroes from the Golden Age, people 20 years from now will be calling this decade the Silver 60s. This worked really well with Olympic medal imagery, and fans were very quick to catch on to it, and it became a colloquialism. Fans began to call the era the Silver Age of Heroes, rather than the Second Heroic Age of Comics, or the Modern Era of Comics, which every new era ends up getting called before it gets named what it will eventually become later on. Right now it's called the Modern Era. It'll probably end up being the Digital Era or something later on. Dealers and sellers also liked the terminology because it made it quite easy for them to differentiate what era of comic they were selling. The Silver Age would come to be remembered for a few things, predominantly camp by those outside it, but also for those within it as a period of enthusiasm and optimism. Even at Marvel, with its relatively more personal-driven plots, it was a period of intense creativity and the birth of many characters and concepts. For example, DC would launch the multiverse during this time period, with the comic that introduced the Golden Age Flash to the Silver Age Flash. So when did the Silver Age end? Well, people actually have a hard time pinpointing when it ended exactly, and instead notice more of a shift in tone and attitude in the comics. By this period, there had been a lessening in the CCA, but it wouldn't be fully abandoned until 2011, with Marvel first firmly abandoning it in 2001. It hung around for a long time. So that wasn't why the Silver Age ended. Some claim that it ended in 1973 with the death of Gwen Stacy, but what most people can agree on is that it just kind of petered out. Some feel that everybody just got sheer burnout and they wanted more complex stories, more introspection, a better balance. However, over time, there are some who have come to miss the Silver Age. They feel that that burst in friendly competition, that creativity, that creation of characters can never be matched again. There have even been attempts at a revival, a kind of neo-Silver Age, a refocus on positivity and a belief in heroes, even if they can still be flawed, again, seeking a balance. I was born well past past the Silver Age, actually just a little bit after the Dark Age. So for me, looking back at the Silver Age is really fascinating and really fun. It's unique and goes for it in ways that stories today oftentimes don't. This is because oftentimes it's not bound by the same levels of continuity as we are now, which is both a positive and a negative depending upon how you look at it. And while at times it can definitely be too silly, the logic isn't there, there are baffling friendships, it is at its core, for me at least, fun, though I can understand why for some people it's just not for them at all. Aliens everywhere. For me personally, I think there's something to enjoy about all the eras and something to dislike about all of them as well. The Silver Age is certainly a unique one though, with how hard the companies had to fight to make lemonade out of lemons and how well they succeeded. What's your relationship with the Silver Age? Let me know down below. This was a long one and I still cliff noted sections. I hope that if you weren't aware what the Silver Age was at all, this was a helpful overview. And hopefully if you did know about it, you learned something new or perhaps enjoyed a new Wertham quote. And also, I hope you appreciate my Spock shirt. I thought if anybody could appreciate this shirt, it would be all of you. I'm Sasha and thanks so much for watching Casually Comics. Please do all of the YouTube things. Like, share, comment, subscribe, and hit that bell notification so that you never miss a vid. This was a lot of fun. Please feel free to leave me questions absolutely anywhere, and I will see you again soon. Bye.